Hey, so I just got through watching this video about the upcoming God of War 2. The God of War 2, God of War Ragnarok um, upcoming game and video. It was talking about things with that, and there were a few things people were talking about. One being that the Thor in that game, because these particular games are taking place within the Norse mythology as opposed to the Greek mythology of the first trilogy. Um, the fact that Thor is a redhead kind of chubby dude, he looks more like a power lifter than what we have gotten accustomed to thanks to Marvel. Um, the second thing was somebody whining about the animation of the main character getting into a boat, and most people were just like, well, they didn't bother redoing the animation for that, because the game recently came out, I want to say like maybe 2 years ago. Beautiful game, and people was like, yeah, if they don't have to redo the animation for something simple like jumping into the boat, they can focus on all the other things, like making such a great game and also getting it out in a shorter time, other than wasting time on something that doesn't need to be. But of course, the biggest thing, and it was something that was kind of, I wouldn't say front and center, but they did make a moment to show it in the trailer. I want to say it's probably the last piece of the trailer, is there's a young black girl. Now, this set a lot of people off as, oh, there's a black person in this game saying about North mythology. Should only be white people there. Apparently, this became such an issue that one of the head writers had to come out and wrote this huge Twitter thread about people chilling out, and it was like he just wanted to make her black, just whatever. But people are just like, oh, they shouldn't be here. One person's just like, oh, the game is woke all of a sudden. Like, that's okay. I didn't want to buy a PS5 anyway. And it's the thing of just the appearance of a black person. I'm not going to buy this console and play all these other games because there's one black person. Just the appearance of a black person is quote unquote woke. It is, they're trying to, I had to look in the comments, but just seeing people, just the comments. Oh, this is cultural appropriation. And it reminded me of a video I watched earlier today from one of the people I enjoy listening to a lot, Bo the Fifth Column. If you ever have a chance, check him out on YouTube and Instagram and Twitter. And he talked about the words, not getting hung up on the words that people use in certain conversations most of the time, because most of the time they're using them wrong. And in this case, it is very much so, and I couldn't help it. I had to dive in and explain that a black person being in a game developers putting the depiction of a black person in a game is not cultural appropriation. And how cultural appropriation, when people talk about, white people culturally appropriating culture, it is when they take something from a culture, hairstyles, dances, phrases, what have you, they take it and present it and then try to erase the culture that it came from or the history that it came from before they got a hold of it. I want to say Bo Derek, she had braids or whatever. There was some famous picture and they talked about it, but even she was just like, no, I got this for some black people. But they ignored all the history, all the black people that came before that had their hairstyle and attributed to her. The whole thing with Miley Cyrus and twerking. There were songs when I was in freaking high school that was talking about, we make songs, what's the why you twerk? It's like it existed before this person did it, but this white person doing it, all of a sudden, they introduced blah blah. It's like, no, they didn't introduce something. There was some white lady selling bonnets, and she tried to act as if this was her creation, and she was the one doing it, negating, and a simple, I won't even say a simple Google search would have shown otherwise. That's cultural appropriation. And as many people pointed out, in Norse mythology, when Christianity came through, they kind of wiped out most of what was known about Norse mythology. The little bit that we do know, it has little to do with some of the descriptions and whatnot, and a lot of that was changed based off what the conquerors, as I say, history is written by the winners. The Christians, what they changed and introduced. So there's not really many depictions of what people actually look like. I do remember seeing something about Thor having red hair, though. I think I saw that. But regardless, just the fact that Kratos, who is of Greek Roman culture, is like there's so much in this game. The fact that, spoiler alert, he is supposed to be the father of Loki. It's like there's so many different things that they change in this mythology, and it's so much that people can, as they say, turn their brain off and enjoy. But seeing a black person, all of a sudden it's like, I'm taken out of the immersion. Not the fact that this child is using magic and wolves are coming out of these arrows, and there's these blue dwarves and with a Scottish accent, but they're supposed to be Norse mythology. The fact that one of the dwarves talks like he's from Texas, none of that is taking you out of it. The fact that the main character, who was ideally probably an olive-skinned man, but his skin looks kind of pale, it looks it's covered in the ashes of his dead wife and child, but you can get past all of that, but the black kid takes you out of it. Now, mind you, the game's not even out yet. Nobody has even played the game, but all of a sudden they're woke. They're and one person brought up the fact that it says, since she represents a group as a whole, that the writers may be scared to attribute a flaw or negative characteristic to her, so as to not upset the group of people that she's supposed to represent. And I think that's a problem that comes from a lot of things. The fact that because there is so few content featuring black people, especially black people with any meaningful story arcs, aside from them being bad guys, that for a lot of people, since that black person is the only person that they do see in entertainment, then for them, that black person represents all black people. They're able to see every other person or anybody else in material and be like, okay, well, that's not a bad black person. That's a bad, or that's not, she's not, all black people aren't bad because she's bad, but she's just a bad person. And I wonder if that's one of those things, self-projecting, or just projecting how they feel, how they look at it. They said they were brown, but as we all know, the phrase all skin folk and kinfolk. Just because they're brown doesn't mean that they don't have some antiquated thoughts on black people being portrayed in media. Because I think they're one of the people who said something about cultural appropriation. It's like, this is not, as I said before, it is not cultural appropriation. And it's idiotic to say that they're appropriating somebody else's culture by doing that. And somebody even tried to equate blackface to this. I was just like, so you're equating this to white people putting on blackface, denigrating black people, mocking black people at a time to where black people didn't have a voice in which to talk back against those stereotypes. There wasn't a lot of prominent black people who could get on TV, who could get on the news and push back against that, or who could make their own movies and push back against that narrative. Like, this is not equivalent to blackface. And it's just frustrating. It's still, and it's always funny, the people who cry about people being snowflakes, how little it takes to set them off, how sensitive they are to the smallest of things. And I'm sorry for, when I'm a little bit quieter, the car, I decided to record this real quick, but it's just really irritating to see. And also just sad that we're still at this point. We're not where we used to be, but the fact that we're still in this point to where people say, oh, just the fact that a black person exists in that space, oh, it's political. It's like, no, you're the only one making it political. It's like, oh, they're virtue signaling. It's just like nobody would care about it. This wouldn't be an issue if you guys weren't so up in arms about it. I don't know anybody that's like, oh yeah, they finally added a black person. It's like, we didn't care. We wouldn't have cared if there wasn't any black people in it. You're the only type of people who care about it. And it's, of course, in the most negative of ways. But yeah, give me your thoughts about what you feel about black people being in certain spaces. Try not to make this too long. Just wanted to give my quick thoughts about it. I may talk about it later with some more people. Who knows? But yeah, thank you for listening. A little random thoughts about GoW Ragnarok. Check out my other podcast, Bold Expressions, on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever podcasts can be found. Have a good day, good morning, good evening, whenever you're listening to this.